Alrighty. So I am super excited to launch one of the most amazing things that I feel is amazing under my brand, Girl Be You. And I wanted to kind of look at the things that I was presenting. And overall, with my blog, I've been doing it since 2016, I believe. I just wanted an outlet to create and to write and to share. And over the last couple of months, I've realized that I wanted to do something a little different to bring a bit more focus and to, now that I kind of understand what I want to be doing with my life, I focused a little bit on a couple of pillars within Girl Be You. And one of those things is conversations. And the conversations that I wanted to have, of course, were with amazing Black women who are out here doing the work, not just being amazing, but actually doing the internal work of showing how amazing they are, out here following their paths, but also following the mantra of Girl Be You. And so I thought there was no better way than to kick off this conversation than with my girl, my sister. I call her my sister friend, Miss Michelle Gaines. She is so amazing, and I am so great. I am so blessed and so fortunate to be able to have this conversation with her. I won't take up too much time in asking questions about who she is and all of that, but she's going to be able to do that and tell you guys who she is and what she does, because I think that she'll do a better job than I can ever do. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Definitely glad to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation. So yeah.
So I am going to start. We have some questions that we're going to get to, but tell me briefly about your journey. And let me back up a little bit. What I wanted to do with these conversations is to have a theme topic. And so me just leaving corporate, I was in corporate since I graduated college in 2006, and I always had this huge dream of being in corporate America. And now life has evolved, and I was in it, did it, and now I'm kind of like outside, like, it was a great experience. But I want to hear from you. Like, tell me your journey in being in corporate. Like, what has it been? And what jobs have you had as well as currently?
Got it. So my career started in corporate America through a program called Inroads Internship. And one of their, if I'm not mistaken, headquarters is based out of Chicago. So they sponsor putting, talented, diverse individuals in Fortune 500 companies, giving them jobs while they're in college during the summer months. So my starting internship was at AT&T in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. I have a technical background, so I started off as in a development role and also a system test role. And then post college, they picked me up full time. So I did the summer internship for 3 years. So it was a very easy, and I was sort of fortunate to have such an ease into the transition because I'd interned there previously. So I spent the first 10 years of my career through 2018 at AT&T. And, as I said, started in development, moved into technical project management, and then ended my career in sort of a blended role of program management and product management. And then I decided that I wanted a change in pace in organizations, in diversity in teams, and in industries. So I decided to move back home to Chicago from Atlanta and figure out a way to work for a financial company. And also, because that's one of the companies I wanted to work for out of college, I knew it was going to be technology or finance. Mm-hmm. And I simply said, okay, I'll move back to Chicago. I didn't really have a plan. Literally a week after I left AT&T, a consulting company called me and said, hey, we have a northern contract. Do you want it? And so I immediately jumped at the opportunity, worked the contract for 1.5 years, networked, and got myself into a now senior management role. I'm a vice president and functionally work in product management. And it's also based out of London, England. So I moved January 2020 to London. And so, yeah, that's what I do. That's sort of my journey and sort of how I navigated and got here. So yeah.
I just think that is so amazing. I think it is so amazing. Growing up together, just seeing like how paths, people take certain paths, and your path has always been inspiring to me, because I'm like, this is just so amazing, because we often have these dreams of things that we want to do, and then to even be in the midst of greatness, to me, that's amazing. So I think that's really cool. So kudos to you, and kudos to you just being amazing. And I know that we won't even have time to go into like all the things that you do, but I just think that it's really, really great that this is your journey and this is your path, because I won't go into detail about how amazing and how impactful you'll be, but we'll just keep going through these conversations. So as a little girl, was that your dream to be in corporate America? Was it your dream to be like, this is the path, or did life just happen to where doors open and opportunities open for you to do this?
So I think my journey was twofold. So like I had a very invested mother who was in technology, who sort of drove us as a child and through adolescence and you know, as a teenager into just really trying different things very early on. So I was in development classes in high school. And even now she's a grandmother and she has my nieces and nephews taking Python development, and they're in middle school. So I will say part of my path was influenced by what I was being taught and guided to, just with my home bringing. I think the other part of it was, which is a goal of mine I haven't quite yet achieved from a corporate standpoint, is when I was around 7, 8, I started wanting to learn more about what she did in her role, and started actually looking at companies. I think I was a bit of an unusual, curious, like 7, 8-year-old trying to, you know, understand how companies work. And I remember telling one of my teachers that, you know, I just felt like I wanted to be like the next CEO of a tech company. And, you know, that was back in the 1990s, you know, so I don't know why I had that thought. I think it might have been just influenced by, you know, my mother and having so many women in my family. Half of them are in engineering, technology, civil engineering, mechanical engineering. So I think it just kind of helps me not have to think too far out the box what I wanted to do. But I will say that as I got into my career, it's the roles I've done have evolved. So things that I may not have originally thought I would do, I've always pushed myself to try different roles so that I can, you know, sort of figure out my niche. So
yeah, I think I love the idea, and I'm always big on our communities and our villages, like, and so I'm so adamant about adults in that village pouring back into the next generation.
yeah.
So to hear that your mom, you know, I love her mom, by the way. Shout out, Jackie. Hey. But just knowing that she planted those seeds in your heart at such a young age, and then also to know that, you know, Black women are just not a monolith. Like, we're not all like, you know, just, you know, administrative assistants, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are people who are women who are out here. And I didn't even know that about your family. Like, that is so amazing. Now, personally, I couldn't do it because I would be like, "Ooh, child, this is a lot." But it's amazing that even at a young age that you were that inquisitive and that knowledgeable and wanting to know what you wanted to do and having a dream. And I think that's really, really amazing. And it really speaks to again, village and community and pouring back into that next generation. So here is a question. So I actually just wrote a blog this week on my website called I Ain't Code Switching No More. And so, and I know a lot of people are like, what does that mean? You know, all of that. And so for me, I shared a bit of this on another social media platform. And I was sharing that I grew up in a predominantly Black elementary school, but when I went to high school, it was predominantly white. And back then there was no diversity and inclusion. There was no such thing as allies and people who align themselves and we're educated and we're fighting the power. And it was, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so one of those things that I had to do and learn how to do was to code switch. And in code switching, I had to navigate these spaces in which I was often and always the only Black girl in the classroom. I was the only Black girl on the track team that the coaches were like, yo, you can make it, of course, because I was Black. And so I realized that part of that was that code switching was me not cowing down, but not fully representing or showing up as myself, because there was this aspect of, I need to survive in this space. I have to survive. And, I had to have questions like, y'all eat fried chicken at home? Like, girl, no, we eat what everybody else eats. Like, I don't understand. So my question to you is, being a Black woman in corporate America and being very successful, like, how do you navigate those spaces in which you are showing up as your authentic self? How do you do that? How do you still speak up while being in these spaces? Like, how do you do
that? I will say that when I first started my career, I was really unsure of how to bring my own sort of authenticity to the table. Because working in technology, you are, in the minority if you are of color, and also a woman from a gender perspective. And so I think for the first few years of my career, while, on paper performance is always good, I meet the expectations, sometimes I exceed them, when you get the annual reviews, I still felt like for the first at least 5 out of the 10 years of the starting of my career, I was really trying to figure out who I was. I knew what I could bring in terms of the skill set, but it's just like how I showed up and having my own voice and feeling, I was generally always like outspoken, but I knew within myself that it was still a bit of timidness behind the voice. And I think that sort of I had a very tough situation on one of my implementations where I just completely disagree with a manager's decision about our sort of direction of travel. And it turned into this huge just nightmare at work. And I was just like, take me on a vacation. I don't want to be here. I don't have to do this. And then I took a step back and I said, okay, I need to start driving more, what spaces I want to be in. And I need to start trying to map out what is my authentic self. And I spent a lot of time just really making sure I had a good sort of image and brand of myself. And I knew sort of, how do I show up to the table when I'm working on this? How do people perceive me? And so the first thing I had to do was sort of look inward to myself to figure that part out. And then figure out that, I don't need to hide that, I'm a Black woman on X team. I don't need to sort of tailor the way that I would approach something because, I'm looking at it from a different lens and maybe it cuts differently than, some of my peers who are typically predominantly white and maybe even of a Middle Eastern background. So I think I spent a lot of time, and I'm still doing it now. Like I did it when I moved to companies, and now here working in London, there are cultural differences between, American and even the British. And so, still trying to stay true to who I am and still deliver is a very, I don't know, calculated balance. And it's tough because what works for you might not work for the next person. So you really have to find out like what makes you who you are, and then figure out, you know, sort of like how you want to show up. And I constantly honestly work on that, because more so recently I've tried to make sure that I hope I end up in a senior world where more people who look like me are represented. So it's really important to me that I, you know, sort of build my own brand and authenticity, so that, you know, people who look like me can, you know that they can achieve the same type of things if that's what they're after.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that kind of leads me into the next question. Do you feel like you're breaking the barrier as a Black woman, not just in your role, but in the field that you're in, like technology? Do you feel like you're breaking that barrier? And if you do, like, are there other women in this field, in this environment, that you kind of like look up to as an inspiration? So
I do. So today I sit in product management role, but what I bring to the table is that I was once in technology organizations where I'm of the minority. I will say that product management over the years has gotten more representation from women specifically, but not necessarily women of color. Specifically in the financial industry, it's very still, you know, male dominant, white dominant roles who sit in product management. So I think what I've had to do is just build relationships with maybe others who I sort of partner with others who are of the same demographic, but maybe they work in like a partnering organization or something like that. And what I've done is try to use those connections to sort of socialize, you know, what I bring to the table, what type of organization I could build as I sort of move up into more senior management. So I think that's part of it. And I mean, there's probably other things I could say, but I'll leave it at that.
Is there someone in your field, and specifically like finance and technology, that you look up to, that you're like, you know, this is my inspiration, this is where I'm trying to get, you know?
I would say I don't have a specific person, but a few things that I do are like, so since I'm heavily involved in product, I love to stay connected to the industry. I think that's just a habit by being in technology for so long. I think traditionally some product managers, I hate to say it, they look so inwardly at what the company's focus is that they forget that this is like a huge, you know, skill set that you could learn from other companies. So I have tapped into, there's a company called the Product School, and they have a well represented Black group of product managers who work for other Fortune 500 companies, so like Amazon, Google, Sony, and like all of these other companies. They have like a community. And so I've tried to tap into that to just find the inspiration of how they navigate through certain product management challenges. And then on the financial side, I won't say that I have someone who sort of looks like me represented. I think the companies are getting there. I'm a bit early to the table. So I kind of just try to look at myself and pick the things that sort of best represent what I think things should be from like a leadership and growth perspective, versus not really, and I pull on my own experiences and don't really have per se a formal mentor in those areas. So
that's understandable. And I think that it's key too, that whatever field that you're in, like what you're doing, that you don't just stay so stuck in your lane, but also finding out what other companies are doing, how you can be better. And then I feel like doing that makes you a better individual for the job that you are sitting at the table for. So I think that's amazing, girl. That is amazing. So my question is, I know that corporate is a very different world, and I'm sure that it's different being in London, but there might be a few same kind of undertones in different places that you go. And I have a few mentees that are like, they're just getting into corporate America, and they're like, I'm so excited. And I'm like, I just be prepared, be prepared. So it's just like, but my question to you is, in corporate, especially being, not seeing so many reflections of yourself being Black women in this role, predominantly white males. Has there been a time when you've experienced racism, and if that, how have you handled it? Like, how do you handle, a comment, or, just something that's just very like passive aggressive, but you still be like, no, wait a minute. So I just want to, from your, like, how do you handle that?
How do I handle it? So I think that I've had fewer of these experiences, but I'm still on the fence about whether some experiences are racism versus bias. It just, like gender bias, it's a very fine line. So, but what I could take from two experiences stick out to me. I'm happy to say they're not at my current place of employment, but we were going through some organizational change, and some of our senior leaders changed. And so my roles have always directly touched, like, C-level managers. And with that, every manager has their own sort of personality, his own style to the way that they lead a team. And there's a situation that was sort of not, me and another resource were held accountable for some negative outcomes, but we weren't ever actually responsible for the outcomes, nor did we have any actions tied to the outcomes. And so we found ourselves being sort of almost professionally chastised on a call very openly. And it took me, it made me take a step back, because I was like, whoa, like this is very inappropriate. I'm not going to address it on the call because there's too many other senior partners on. So I tried to very quickly move past it. The first thing I actually did with that situation was just set up a meeting with that manager directly, because I wanted to make sure I, at least before I filled out any formal paperwork, made sure that they understood that what they did on the call I felt was inappropriate, and that, they could have handled it differently. Not to say that everyone doesn't have their own leadership style, but you obviously know, you work with human beings. There's a certain amount of respect that I think should still be there. So I directly called them and said, hey, this XYZ, this was inappropriate. Basically, do you have anything to say? What were you thinking that day, type of thing? And I think he knew by me having that one-on-one that he'd done something that I didn't agree with. Now, I will say he continued to be that way even after I left the organization. And I would say step two to that meant there were some formal sort of ethics things that were filled out in response to some of the things he did. So my advice is always, like, try to pull the person aside. I hate to say that some people are just so bad at being biased that, it's almost like they are oblivious to it. But if you've had that one-on-one conversation with them and it continues, then I just feel like you have to figure out where your journey ends with that person and in that organization. And you have to move very quickly to, just get out and find a different path. And sometimes that means having opportunities within the company you're at. And sometimes that means separating and you taking your talents elsewhere, so that you don't have to, have that type of situation. My current company has like literally a zero tolerance for racism, but I will say there are loopholes. So, they're always the folks who come and say, teach us. We didn't know that this was a thing, type of thing.
Let me just interject there. Like, how do you feel about this teaching? Now, I'm gonna say, I feel like, I feel as Black women and Black people in general, we've always had to have a duality. So we've had to learn our own history, which was not taught to us, and navigate certain things. Excuse me, like navigating what it means to be Black and stepping
Mhm.
into that and being proud of that in a world where it's like people don't want to celebrate the
Mhm.
amazing things that Black folks do, but they do want to copy it and they do want to emulate it, but not
Yeah.
at the cost of being Black. But then also we have to learn how to be in these spaces. And like you say,
Mhm.
um, figuring out how to be authentic, figuring out how
Right.
to navigate and how to present yourself in a way where you both yield respect as well
Mhm.
as respect for yourself and the work that you
Yeah.
bring to the table. And so I always find it interesting when it's a conversation of, just teach me. Just teach me how it is. And
Yeah.
I feel like if you can go on Amazon and you can buy new shoes and a nice little shirt that you can be an Amazon affiliate for, you can do the same thing in finding books in which you can educate yourself. Now, that is me being very outspoken about the topic, but I'm just interested to hear how you feel
Yeah.
about that.
So I actually agree. So let me first say that the same way that people are, a lot of people are curious about history and they know the history of their country and they know who the first president was. They can flip back in history, and I think people need to take more ownership that they themselves have ignored something. It's almost like you know everything. To equivalent to England, you know everything about Princess Diana, and you know everything about the Queen, but yet you act oblivious to the legislative that is so biased that doesn't give those of Afro descent here the same opportunity.
Yes.
Or if someone is, say, mixed British race, are they now Black British because one of
Right.
their parents is of African descent? So I do feel like there needs to be more, I feel like there needs to be more ownership. The same way you go out and you learn about things,
Mm-hmm.
you can go out and there's so many resources to help you get developed. Now, I will say that there always is going to be a level of a corporate course for diversity. There's always going to be that in most industries that you work in. And I think it should cover not just only African Americans and Blacks, but other nationalities as well. But I just feel like a lot of the ownership needs to be on the individual that has missed out
Mm-hmm.
on what's happening in the rest of the world, yet they know so much about other things and
Exactly.
have, are just sort of oblivious to the idea. And a lot of it they will find if they look inward has probably been ignored,
Yeah.
for years and intentionally ignored, kind of just like that's their problem or
Me.
yeah, that's not my, yeah. They've got to invest more time on their side. So, owner,
Definitely agree. I'm glad that we're on the same page when it comes to that.
yeah, ownership.
So, how important, I know I follow you on a few of social media platforms.
Mhm.
And I'd love to see the community that you're creating with other Black women. And so I would like to know how important that is and how you see that has impacted your role there. One, being in a completely different space, like,
Yeah,
I mean, away from family, away from friends, there,
yeah.
went to London for a job. Like, how important is
Mhm.
community of Black women for
Mhm.
you? And how do you see how it has impacted the other women who are a part too?
Yes. So I will say I always have my girlfriends back home in the States. Like you included, sister for life.
Yes.
But when you move to another country, you really need to build a community because the reality is you can't sit on FaceTime 24/7.
Right.
And to be honest, it gets very old texting people back
Mm-hmm.
home. Like I do it, but I have my schedule set up where I have to schedule myself to make sure I connect with people back home.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to like family is a given, right? But my community of my African American friends who are back home, like I've had to find ways to stay connected with them. So I knew automatically. I just wanted when I came here, I wanted a community of women who looked like me, who
Mm-hmm.
could also helped me navigate throughout England, because there is no website, no YouTube video or anything of the sorts that could ever prepare you for life in England. Like, you can get through, how do you buy a flat and how do you do this type of things, but there's something that's very true to Black women, no matter the country. And I needed to connect with other Black women so I could, learn more about the culture, learn more about their experiences, and then just also sort of connect with women who look like me, which is something I love to do, just to have like that sense of sisterhood and support. And then, with the bonus that it's social, so it's not just like, it's not just about your own personal development and things you can gain from other women, but it's also about the social aspect of it, that I love so much. So yeah, the opportunity came to sort of co-president lead this organization that has a chapter here in the UK, and they have one in Germany. And I like social event planning personally. I do it in my family as well. So I said, oh,
yes,
this might not be a bad idea, because, this is what I do. And I also like digital content and creating videos and pictures and capturing memories and stuff like that. And I love music and stuff. So I've sort of combined other passions, and it helps support, running the group. But and a lot of the women I've connected with, they're like, one girl's from Chicago, same age.
Wow.
In California.
What's the name of the group? Because you're gonna share this.
Yes, so it is called the Black Girl Social Club. It was founded out of Atlanta. It's about less than 2 years old, by a lady named Carmen. So shout out to Carmen. And she created this organization. It's founded off of just sheer sisterhood, being able to have that support. It offers professional development, social networking, and support to women of all sort of diverse backgrounds. And the only qualification is that you must be Black and African American of Afro descent. So it is all for us, by us, and I love it.
Yes, I think that is so important. I always tell people that I'm not against other people. I'm just really pro-Black. I'm really about seeing us win, us having communities, and being have a group of people where we can go and be safe and not feel judged and
right.
But to be empowered and inspired in every walk of our life. And it seems like this was just the perfect thing for you. I mean, coming there and like knowing no one. And then I look anywhere Michelle goes, she's gonna find some girlfriends. Like,
everybody has told me that, and I was just like, I was worried at first. The first 6 months, I was like, this is rough. But yeah, I really started researching organizations, and actually one of my girlfriends in Atlanta told me that they had a chapter in the UK, and she was like, hey, would you be interested in this? So I must admit, like, it's one of my closer top 5 circle of girlfriends. Steph called me up and was like, hey, Black Girl Social Club has a UK chapter, you might want to check it out. And I text her back like a week later. I was like, oh, this is great. I've joined. I'm a member. And then like months later, when they approached me to be in a leadership role to help with planning and running the chapter, I was like, oh yeah, this would be good. This would be so good.
It's so good watching them. Like, I'm not even there, but man, if I was in London, it would be so. But it's so amazing because community is so important. It is so important to take care of our hearts and our minds and our souls. And like you said, FaceTime and phones are amazing, but there is nothing that can match the interaction, the human interaction of someone who understands, who's there and can help navigate, which leads me to my next question. This is not on our questions list, Michelle, but but how important and how have you been taking care of your mental health? I will say for me, um after like this whole year of like being in the house and this pandemic, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Like the grocery stores are crazy, and now we're locked up, and all this other stuff, and it takes a toll on your mental, and not to mention just life in general. And so that led me to really put my mental health back in its respective place, and making sure that I take care of that, because it's just so much that goes on. So how important is mental health to you, and what are you doing to ensure that you're in a healthy space mentally?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mental health is probably one of like top 5 or top 3 important things to me, and because it ends up impacting my day-to-day life. It ends up impacting how cheery I am to show up at work, to log on in this virtual setting. Some people think it's like easy to work from home. It has its pros, but if you're not feeling your 100% yourself, dragging to get online, I've definitely experienced that, especially the first 6 months living here and having half the time cut from being in the office to being at home. So I think probably for the first 6 months of last year, I ignored my mental health, which is I openly admit that. Like I was a functional wreck. Like I was just functioning. Like I was getting my work done. I was performing well. No one was going to ever tell me that I was slipping up.
Right.
But I knew, like, sort of off camera, in this house, like I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. So I think for the first few months, like I ignored it, and that meant coping by going out to eat all the time. I love fine dining. I hate to say it, but
yes, she does. Don't you apologize. She loves fine dining.
I go out to eat. I went out to eat entirely too much. Too many dinners, too many glasses of wine. I started getting into a bad health space as well, right? And so, but by the time I started traveling back home last year, and then getting some more balance, but then my mental health took a dip back in November when we got restricted from flying back in the U.S. because now we have this other, other things going on. So what I've had to do to sort of overcome it is, one, I'm always honest and transparent with my own emotions. Like I know how I'm feeling, but when I feel sort of that trigger in me that's not willing to sort of be anxious to get online at work in the morning, sometimes that may mean I take a few extra hours in the morning. And to be honest, I'll push some things out just because I need a second to get it together. And so I've become sort of unapologetic about that, because it's something that I need to do so that I can show up better. And that may just mean having a cup of tea on the balcony and just literally doing nothing, or going to the rooftop and getting some fresh air and literally sitting down and doing nothing, The other thing I've done or started picking up doing, I was really affected by not being able to get a manicure and pedicure. And it might sound very weird.
No.
I just noticed that that's like a lifelong thing. So I didn't realize how much it affected me. That's a must have. And, just looking at my nails, fleshly manicure, are just it's so uplifting, because I was looking so good last year. I hated it. I was looking busted. I took less pictures of myself last year than any other year in my entire life, because I was a wreck.
Yeah.
The other thing I started doing was just getting dressed up again. So every day I'm dressed for work, getting dressed up when I'm going to the grocery store, even if that's the only place I'm going. Getting back into that habit again of doing that. And then that started making me realize how much weight I gained. So then I started, okay, I need to scale back all of this eating out, and I need to get back to my joy of cooking, because I love cooking a lot. And so I've gotten back into that. And I think those things have helped me. And then I also randomly bought a piano a few months ago.
I was like,
I used to play along years ago. some people who don't know my childhood may not even realize that I played piano for almost 15 years. You couldn't tell because it's horrible.
Well, you could just call Jeremiah for your lesson.
I'm working on it. And I might need to call your brother for a consult.
Yeah.
Shout out to you. But yeah, so that helps me, and music helps me. So it's just started to get back in those habits. And then I also started like journaling, writing again. And that's something that I got away from, and I've been horrible. And I have literally every journal I've ever written, and I collect them since I was 10.
Wow.
And it's very noticeable that I took a break in my writing last year.
Yeah.
So I've gotten back into that, and also trying to find some words to write more poetry. It's horrible right now because I'm like, man, I'm so out of practice that it's like walking again. So it's baby steps. So yeah.
I think that you bring up a really good point about, even just honoring your time. I think that we've been taught so long that we gotta hustle, go, fill up our time, do this and that. And I think, I always say that, but I believe that certain things happen to slow us down, and two, to get our attention. And over this last year, I've definitely had to slow down, and my attention has been received and gotten, however you want to say it. But I agree with you about just starting your day slower. Like I had to learn how to like not just jump out of bed, but just to slowly sometimes start your day. And then most times saying no when necessary, or not answering your phone because on the other end there's going to be a request. And journaling is so therapeutic, and it just allows your mind to be clear, and to kind of escape those overwhelming thoughts too. One of the things that I've done a whole lot of, which I have to stop, is buying books. I've been reading like every time I look around, I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks like a great book. So I just bought 2 new books, and then someone else told me about this other book, and I'm like, I'm not gonna buy it because I still have like 20 books to read. And I started a book club, so it's just like so many books. But reading and writing for me is a way to clear mental blocks, and to release things, and to just free you up a bit. So I think that's really, really amazing. And I love that you got your piano, because I'm like, look at Michelle, in a minute she's like playing all the keys.
I'm telling you, don't play with me. I'm coming through with a Bach classic next year. Watch out.
Suddenly she's gonna be on Instagram like, "Lil, yo, check it, I bought my piano, but look at me now."
Right.
So as we come to an end, I just have one last question, and that question would be, what is your advice to another Black woman who is entering and navigating the corporate space? Like, what would be maybe the top 2 things or top 3 things that you would tell this Black woman entering into corporate?
I would say, number 1, figure out your brand. A lot of people think that just because they have all these educational degrees and real experiences, that sometimes I think people might score themselves on a skill level higher than maybe where they're really at. So just being able to be really, that's a very individual thing that I think everyone has to do, like understand your brand and sort of what you bring to the table, and getting that sort of elevator pitch ironed out in your mind, so that it's very easy for you to present yourself when needed to, when you're either transitioning roles or get a new job at a company, et cetera. The second thing I would say is have a balance between your work and your life. And because to me, you should be the same person in the full circle of life. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that the leadership is just centric on sort of what you do at work and what you bring to the table. But it doesn't become as hard and work if you do it in your own personal life. That doesn't mean, you know, some people equivalent being a leader to being sort of like this dictator. That doesn't mean coming home and being like a train wreck to your family or something. You got to be able to balance it, but it does mean that the same way, say you talk to your 2-year-old, should be having that empathy, should show up at work, right? And the way you treat human adults. And I think that having a good balance between work and home life is good, because it's not just about the, you know, the paycheck you're getting. You're also getting that to provide for a family, I would assume, or yourself, or your habits. So I think it's about that. The last thing I would say is it's always you versus your future self, and it's not about anybody else. It's, in my own life, I look at myself, and there are reasons why I don't have like inspirations from certain CIOs, because CEOs or CIOs, they only, their journey is relevant to themselves. It's very individual. And I think oftentimes we look at them and we try to emulate them, and even that's a goal of mine. But I always look at, you know, it's Michelle today versus CEO Michelle, and where I get, you know, in the next few years. So it's just having that mentality that it's really you versus you, that drives your own competition to be internal. And it doesn't, you know, it makes you show up differently when you interact with other people, because you're all about the team and you're humble about yourself. You know, it's not, you know, so I think that has helped me in my career. It, you know, I don't show up in competition with anybody. It's all about what I think about myself, how I carry myself, what I bring to the table. If I need to work on something, I try to take accountability for that. But just always remember, it's you versus your future self. And I think that will probably take the person a long way. So.
Oh my gosh, that is just so amazing. I'm sitting here listening, like, look at Michelle. Talk, girl, talk. I want to see you talk. No, I absolutely love that. I think that is so amazing. I think that if we take that approach to where it's me against me, I'm not competing with anyone else because I'm in my own lane. I think
in
that
your own lane. Yeah.
It's just so beautiful. So again, thank you so much for being my first guest on Girl Be You Conversations, Black Women in Corporate America. This has been so amazing. I am privileged and honored because y'all, I'm gonna tell you right now, y'all better look out for Michelle. She is going to be the CEO that is going to be in Ebony. Is Ebony still around? Jet, not the Jet, the Jet's not around no more. The Ebony. Essence, you know, she's going to be doing the thing. And then when she does, she's going to come back and we're just going to chat again. And I'm like, girl, look at us. Look at us.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you
so
much. Love you so much. And we'll talk very, very soon.
Love you.
All right.
You.
You're welcome.